So I have a book here, and I'm wondering if you can date this. Ours is the first age in which many thousands of the best trained individual minds have made it a full-time business to get inside the collective public mind. To get inside in order to manipulate, exploit, control is the object now, and to generate heat, not light, is the intention. To keep everybody in the helpless state engendered by prolonged mental rutting is the effect of many ads and much entertainment alike. Since so many minds are engaged in bringing about this condition of public helplessness, and since these programs of commercial education are so much more expensive and influential than the relatively puny offerings sponsored by schools and colleges, it seems fitting to devise a method for reversing the process. Why not use the new commercial education as a means to enlightening its intended prey? Why not assist the public to observe consciously the drama which is intended to operate upon it unconsciously? Do you recognize what I'm reading? Can you tell where we are in the great mosaic of the media? Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. So can you tell we're in the whirlpool?
Like, yeah, being sucked down it.
Oh, yes. So this goes on to say this is, of course, Marshall McLuhan's Mechanical Bride, which we're going to be talking about tonight. And he's setting us up for the problem that we have been experiencing in the media, and saying this, as this method was followed, a Descent into the Maelstrom by Edgar Poe kept coming to mind. Poe's sailor saved himself by studying the action of the whirlpool and cooperating with it. The present book likewise makes few attempts to attack the very considerable currents and pressures set up around us today by the mechanical agencies of the press, radio, movies, and advertising. It does attempt to set the reader at the center of the revolving picture created by these affairs, where he may observe the action that is in progress and in which everybody is involved. From the analysis of that action, it is hoped, many individual strategies may suggest themselves. But it is seldom the business of this book to take account of such strategies. So we're gonna drop you in the middle of the maelstrom of whatever it is, and just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, it's spoken in first person diabolical, right?
This book or the advertising?
No, what you had just read,
Oh,
right? It's so manipulative. I thought, oh, it sounds like Uncle Screwtape, but I know it isn't. But
how interesting. Well, okay.
Yeah, it was the same type of vibe.
Okay, so this is. Do you know anything about Marshall McLuhan? You
I know enough about it from having spoken to you and Mel, who's the expert, who should be here. Mel, you should be here.
Mel is in the maelstrom of the chat, and she's promised to Okay, she's got aloha, welcome aboard. Yes, welcome aboard.
She's promised to make up for my stupidity and ignorance topic, but what do I know of McLuhan? Well, I grew up in the world he's describing.
Well,
Is
yes,
that good enough?
this is true. But so when I was reading it, I mean, so this is you are in the state of every man of the audience, right? It's like not
Yes.
having read McLuhan and suddenly
Hmm.
being thrown into the whirlpool of our McLuhanisms that we've been talking about all along. The medium is the message, don't you know? And we live in a global village, and it's all that.
Oh, yeah.
But when I was reading that, and that your first thought was, it sounds like Satan.
Yeah. It sounds like Uncle Screwtape. Well, one of his minions,
How so?
right?
How so?
Well, I mean, he's describing how people are being sucked into advertising. Sounds
Oh,
like,
yes.
and how they're being manipulated, and how they're being manipulated constantly from every angle of life. That's what it
Well,
sounds
always,
like
but
Uncle
say
Screwtape was trying to
ours
do.
is the first age in which many thousands of the best trained individual minds have made it a full-time business to get inside the collective public mind. I mean,
Well, that's demonic. Yeah, that's what C.S. Lewis described as the
wow.
demons
I
doing,
hadn't thought of it
trying to
that
get into
way.
people's minds.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I did read that book, and that's exactly what they were doing. And Uncle Screwtape is speaking to. Is it Wormtongue? What was
Yeah,
the name of
Wormtongue is
that? I
his
forget now.
nephew.
Right, his nephew, right, and describing to him this what you just read, how you get into their psyche and how you make them think certain things and lead them to conclude certain things and lead them into certain situations and make them think they want things that they shouldn't, which is what an advertiser does, like make them think they want things they don't need.
Okay,
Right, because
one, you're totally right, and my mind is now blown because that was I mean, you're right that this fits absolutely with what we've been talking about with the satanic. But the best trained individual minds. I mean, he's talking about the university educated, the college the college men and women who are now engaged. When do you think that he wrote this? I mean, you say it sounds like Screwtape.
Well, okay, so I know Lewis wrote that in the 1940s,
Right,
and
right.
I doubt McLuhan. I, for some reason, doubt McLuhan was influenced by it, but I have no way of knowing that, whether or not he was influenced by it. I don't think he has to have been influenced by it. I mean, or was Lewis influenced by advertisers? I don't know. He was certainly surrounded by enough, war propaganda. He could have been, but
Well, you have clearly been hanging out with Mel and our Maelstrom and the Mosaic Ark of McLuhanisms long enough to. Yes, you're
yeah.
absolutely right. That's exactly. I had not thought of that, but
Huh.
I we shall now let's well, okay. What's the best order of things to introduce someone to the McLuhan media maelstrom? Oh, guess what? There is no great order because that's the whole large point of the problem.
Oh, it's just come at you from all directions.
Well, it
Is
comes
that
from
it?
all directions, and
The idea?
I had him starting with a picture of him here on his television, reflecting himself in his television. But we will go to the next picture I had, which
Oh,
is
that's genius.
McLuhan at Cambridge. Literally at the
Oh,
very same time when he could have heard those on the radio, the screw tape letters,
oh,
right? Because he was
yeah.
actually no. This is I had not thought of that. Yes, okay. One, I have always recognized McLuhan. Let's see, how did I? It's like one. Okay, you realize that you're in McLuhan's world no matter what because you've been in it all your life, all along, and he's described much of what we are in, and wildly enough, rather earlier than most people would have expected such an analysis, I think. I mean, that's what I was, when I was reading this, I was thinking, doesn't this sound like now, right?
Yeah,
Getting inside the collective
it
public
does.
mind to get inside in order to manipulate, exploit, control is the object now. Wait a minute. That's what we're worrying about
Mhm.
constantly with our social media, right? Isn't it? Like all the tech
Yeah,
guys
right.
trying to get inside, manipulate with the algorithms, exploit with the advertising that they're sending into the, through your algorithm tells you what ad to show you and control all of us. Sounds like now,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll never forget the first time I saw my phone light up when I was driving. I was driving to the store and it said, "You are 19 minutes away from your destination." I'm like, "What?" I don't know where I was going,
Right,
right? Because
exactly.
it had been tracking my movements, and I just thought that was super creepy.
So we live in the world that he's describing, right? I mean, it's like this, and since so many minds are, keep everybody in the helpless state, prolonged by mental rutting,
Oh,
right? Rutting meaning like
right. It'll
dry
put you
humping,
in a helpless. Yeah, yeah, right. It'll
masturbatory,
put you in a helpless state because
constantly.
once you, yeah, because once you know your phone's going to tell you how long it takes you to get somewhere, you're going to stop being freaked out by it and start expecting it, and then you're going to start looking for it, and then you're not going to make a move without consulting it.
Constantly. So
Yeah.
so it's like, it sounds like now, since so many minds are engaged in bringing about this condition of public helplessness, which is what everyone's complaining about in the media world right now, that we are constantly deluded and misled and lied to and gaslit, and here he is describing it already. And since these programs of commercial education, in other words, the amount of money that goes into advertising and tech and creating the algorithms and designing the platforms vastly outweighs the amount of money that goes into like ordinary education, what he says, the puny,
Yeah.
are so much more expensive and influential, like, Mad Men, but now, than the relatively
Mhm.
puny offerings sponsored by schools and colleges, it seemed fitting to devise a method for reversing the process with a single book, right? Or that McLuhan is trying to figure out, how do you undo all of this media training that people are caught up in? How can we take account of it? And then undercuts himself after he gives his Edgar Allan Poe comparison by saying, but I'm not going to give you the strategies. I just need to describe what you're in, right? And you're like, wait a minute. Well, are
Well,
there going to
that's
be
step one,
strategies?
though. Well, yeah, maybe he didn't know what the strategies were yet, but maybe, I'm just taking a guess, never having read them. Maybe he anticipated that it was going to get worse and more insidious.
Well, this is wild. So he actually, okay, just to let you off the hook, he published this in 1951.
Okay.
He,
Oh, well,
he
close.
was he was 40, right? He was born in 1911. He
Okay.
published this in 1951. It's actually the first book he published. So, it's like he becomes latterly more famous, very, very famous, by the 60s and 70s. He publishes Understanding Media, The Extensions of Man in
Mm.
1975. And and it was by that point that he'd been on television a lot, right? He becomes, by the 60s and 70s, the sort of most famous English professor in the world. It's like he's the Jordan, I
Oh.
mean, it's literally the Jordan Peterson of his day, in the sense that he's on all
Mm.
the media. He's Canadian. And he seems to be unpacking and disentangling a lot of the imagery and effects that people are caught up in the present, right? So, but this is the thing. He actually published this book right after he finished his PhD in 1943.
Mhm.
Is that right? Yeah, 1943. And the PhD doesn't get published until like 2006 or so. So it's wild because
Oh.
it's not there in the conversation for decades and decades and decades.
Huh.
So it's like, where did this book, The Mechanical Bride, seems to like literally come out of just absolutely nowhere. It's suddenly bang, here it is. His first book, it only sells like a few hundred copies. Like it falls completely flat. Nobody notices.
That was
No,
1943.
in 1951,
1951,
when he
sorry.
publishes The
All right.
Mechanical Bride. So it's like he just sort of burst on the scene with this insight from nowhere,
Hmm.
which is wild.
Couldn't have been from
No, it's not
nowhere.
from nowhere.
It was from
Well, and
somewhere.
you recognizing that it sounds a lot like Screw Tape already are on the
Yeah.
way to figuring out where he got it.
Oh. Well, gee.
Put together the pieces. Come on, I've trained you for years and years and years now. You
I
should know. You
I can only
should
think
know
I
how
can
to
only think
figure
war
out how
propaganda
to put
because of the
together
time
all these
the time he was.
connections.
I was thinking war propaganda because of the time he was writing it, but
Okay, war
that would
propaganda. I mean, he's publishing this Mechanical Bride in the mid 20th century. So we think of our situation now in 2024. It's like, oh my gosh, we're all so out, on the cutting edge of media extension. And he's already
oh,
explaining the effects of this absorption in the advertising world.
did he study advertising?
No,
because in the 1930s it was already being noticed that sales were going up depending upon what stars were doing on the screen.
Oh yes.
Right.
Oh yes.
So like the T-shirt sales completely flattened when one actor didn't wear one in one scene.
Oh yes.
And I want to say it was Clark Gable, but I can't remember which one it was. But it was super early, like in the 1930s,
yes.
right? Or when people started smoking, and then there was a great movie that came out a couple of years ago called Thank You for Smoking, which explained a lot of this. It's a lot of what goes on in Washington with lobbying, but also a lot of what goes on with advertising. It was very funny.
All of it, definitely.
Yeah.
Right? So it's in fact been going on for some decades, even before he publishes The Mechanical Bride.
Yes.
No, he did not study advertising.
Interesting.
How could someone come to such an insightful reading of the media as he does? He talks about it's like, okay, so what he thinks he's doing in this, he's saying he's going to sort of give you a way of looking at all these advertisements that he's going to be talking about. And he's saying most of the exhibits in this book have been selected because of their typical and familiar quality. It's like, I'm going to show you stuff that you've seen before already. They represent a world of social myths or forms and speak a language we both know and do not know. After making his study of the nursery rhyme, "Where are you going, my pretty maid?" the anthropologist C.B. Lewis pointed out that the folk has neither part nor lot in the making of folklore. That is also true of the folklore of industrial man, so much of which stems from the laboratory, the studio, and the advertising agencies. But amid the diversity of our inventions and abstract techniques of production and distribution, there'll be found a great degree of cohesion and unity. This consistency is not conscious in origin or effect and seems to arise from a sort of collective dream. For that reason, as well as because of the widespread popularity of these objects and processes, they are here referred to as the folklore of industrial man. They are unfolded by exhibit and commentary as a single landscape. A whirling phantasmagoria can be grasped only when arrested for contemplation. And this very arrest is also a release from the usual participation. That's pretty dense. I mean, the thing is, McLuhan is not easy to read. This is, to be fair to everyone listening, if it sounds like a bit of, horrible gibberish sometimes, you're not wrong. It's dense. It's good, right? And he's actually coming. Do you get a feel for what he's doing? Well,
now I think he sounds like Joseph Campbell, and he's talking about myths.
Okay, he's talking about myth, and that this is advertising, which he's calling folklore. Right. And it's this folklore of industrial man, and it's coming out of all this. And what we're going to do, right, we're going to look at it and contemplate it.
Philosophy?
Mm-hmm.
Psychology?
Oh, it's much closer to home. Come on. You can do it. You can do it. What did he study?
Something simple.
What? Okay. Why might I be so excited at discovering where
he's an historian?
Tighten it up. Come on. What is he?
Okay, is he a medievalist?
It's like charades. Sounds like.
No, I would not have guessed that, because nothing that he was talking about sounded remote. It all sounded so close. But as you've been pointing out for years, yes, it's the name of the other book, A Distant Mirror, right? It's very close to what
what Lewis wrote, right? So yes, Marshall McLuhan was a medievalist, straight out, flat out. And this is okay. One, he's doing exegesis, right? This is his primary training was okay. So he gets his degree in, I don't know what it counted as, English, right? But I mean that he invents this whole like new academic discipline that we now call media studies. It comes straight out of the fact that he's basically training him. He kind of in effect trained himself by way of what he did for his dissertation project, but he comes out of exactly all of the kind of stuff that we've been talking about, the entire time on the Mosaic Ark, which is in fact named for his method, right? That we got that idea of the mosaic, right? Mosaic is both Moses's ark, right? So there's the sort of tradition from Moses, but the Mosaic Ark that we are traveling in is the taking of pieces and putting them all together and seeing them in relationship and such. We picked that up from McLuhan in our thinking, but most people read McLuhan and think he's having to invent this because he's dealing with this whole new media environment. And then they say, well, either he's like tellingly, sort of, well, if I say it this way, it makes it sound more, he's way too mystical, right? It's contemplation, right? He said, I'm not going to give you strategies for dealing with it. I'm going to give you ways of being in the midst of it and contemplating it. So I will give you.
So he was saying human nature, or I guess human nature taken from the Middle Ages. If you were to put it here today, the only thing different would be the technology, I think.
Okay, yes and no, right? Because he actually also believes that the technology changes us, because that's what he understood about the media as extensions of. We're going to have to do like a whole month on McLuhan if you haven't figured it out, because we are.
I'm any indication.
Well, no, I mean, we started by throwing Casey in and saying swim in the maelstrom.
I don't mind. That's good, because like that first thing you read, I recognized all of it, not only from the whole time I've been on this earth. That's what it's been like.
Right.
But also, like I said, it sounded like the screw tape letters, right? Which there's an awful lot of psychology that goes into advertising. When I graduated college in the late 80s, people who I knew who were studying psychology, that was the number one, profession that they could actually apply for with their psychology degree. It was either human resources or advertising.
Oh yeah. So it's all all what he's saying. It's the manipulation of the collective public mind, so that they're going into it. So by the time he's writing, I mean, advertising as a profession, as we know it now, was at least a generation old. It's older than World War I. It kicks off at the sort of hyper level with Bernays right after World War I.
Yeah.
But it had been, industry had been working on advertising throughout the 19th century. So.
And it's been around for thousands of years, right? I mean, there's on the walls of Pompeii, there are advertisements to come eat at this tavern.
Well, yes, so yes, but in and this is why it's both. It feels like all throughout human history, and so very human, and also tied to particular media, right? That the media that's what changes the ability, and that's why this is industrial man, the folklore of industrial man, not just medieval man or early modern man, but industrial man
on a massive scale, not just you happen to you don't just have to walk by the tavern and see the ad. It's everywhere you go. It's on the radio when you wake up in the morning, and before you go to sleep at night, and when you're on the train, you see it on a billboard, and you're looking down at your paper, and there's an advertisement, and it's everywhere you go. You can't escape it. If they could project it into your dreams, a la Futurama, they would probably do it.
Right. And think about it in the obverse. It's like I'm still reading David Blackburn's book on Germany. I'm almost finished. I spent today reading about World War II, which was a little bit of a downer. But as it following World War II, you sort of you've been reading for the 19th century about Germany, and it has Beethoven and Wagner, and the Germans are known for their great music and philosophy and such, and you get through World War I and World War II, and it's like nothing. Right? It's like, do they have any culture left? And anything that they do have is Coca-Cola ads, right? It's either American consumer culture or the Soviet effort at suppressing consumer culture, which they're sort of it's interesting. Blackburn talks about how Germany ends up twinned, right? It's like everything German happens twice, both in the American version and the Soviet version. But it's like, what happened to culture, right? Where is there any culture? It's all in the advertising now. There's nothing. I mean, it's like, it's everything we do. We think of the ads as the things that are in between the content, right? It's like, content, ad, content, ad. But what McLuhan realizes, no, it's the ads. The ad content. The ads are the folklore. The ads are the thing that is in everybody's head. The ads are the thing that is actually binding the culture. So you don't have any more great public art. You've got billboards.
Well, there are whole YouTube channels dedicated to old 1970s or 1960s advertisements because it's nostalgia.
Yep.
and nostalgia is part of your culture. Like, oh, I remember that from so many years ago.
But it's
And
even more deeply
yeah,
your culture, because it's like the jingles and the repetitive. It's what McLuhan recognized, and there were others doing it too that he may have met in Cambridge. That it's the ads that create the culture, right? You've got all of these incredibly creative minds, highly intelligent creative minds, working to get people to buy these things, and that is in fact what's defining our mythology now.
interesting. Hmm. And he was dedicated to finding to making people aware of this. But what do you do with the awareness?
That's a really good question, because yes. So one, we're going to look at Mechanical Bride and some of his examples in detail in this stream. What I think we need to do is sort of work through various levels of McLuhanisms over the next several weeks, however long it takes. We can stream this media moment that we're streaming into is McLuhan. I mean, McLuhan predicted the internet. Everybody talks about that, saying he's actually highly one of his great influences was James Joyce, right? So McLuhan kind of like writes the academic version of Finnegan's Wake. That
sounds confusing.
He recognized that what Joyce was picking up on, which was the way in which the internet, which he died in 1980, 81. So he never knew the actual internet, but as he's describing the way in which the media work together and its sort of mythological blending and melding of things, he predicted the kind of experience that we are creating by way of our streaming into this media as well, right? This digital, light-born, temporal, so it's like, what kind of thing are we in? It's a kind of dream space, right? When you're on your phone and you're scrolling, and then you link to something and you link to something and you link to something and you link to, do you know how much time has passed ever? Right? It's like you go into this dream. It's like you said, it's in our dreams. It is.
Yeah.
It's like we're dreaming wide awake, eyes wide shut, right? We're dreaming as
Allison,
we are in the stream.
That's Alice in Wonderland, right? She goes down the rabbit hole and all of these things appear before her as she's falling to another world. She sees like everything around her. And they eventually make up the world that she's dropping herself into, but it's just it's like a whirlpool, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
and everything's swirling around her. Interesting that more than one person, more than one author, had that in their consciousness.
Well,
that idea.
This is one of the things McLuhan points out eventually, and so we're going to have to sort of in McLuhan fashion go through McLuhanisms. And each of his books is very different, right? And let's say his dissertation, and I've read all of these, his dissertation, Mechanical Bride, Gutenberg Galaxy, Understanding Media, The Medium is the Massage, The Global Village. There's one of his I'm missing, I think. And then there's a collection, there's some things that were published after he died, like The Laws of Media and so forth. Every single one of these books is rhetorically completely different, right? It's like he liked trying out different modes of presentation, because he's always trying to get it. It's like, you're right. It's like, is he trying to give us a way out or a way further in, or this contemplation? From my perspective, it just feels monastic, right? It feels like exactly the kind of reading of scripture that takes you inside of the story and opens it out to you. And then he does that, and then you're like, oh, so where are we now? And one of my favorite of his books is a collection of his essays on sort of the more modern experience of all of these media, particularly in, for example, the Mass. And it's like reading a description of what it is to be caught up in the media. He was very good at sort of giving you that sensation. Sort of, but that's why I say it's more contemplation than anything else, and you can enjoy it if you recognize it as contemplative rather than something else.
So he did for, like, I guess the active modern world, a contemplation of it, what St. Francis did for the natural world, at least.
Yes,
That's
very much like that.
yeah,
So how did he magically get to this?
interesting.
So he's born in Canada, but he actually ended up he did his PhD studies at Cambridge in England. And it's I don't know whether he met people like Lewis and Tolkien. They're in Oxford at that point. But he's studying with F.R. Leavis in Cambridge. I hope I have that right. And he's in the midst of the kinds of conversations they would be having. He's actually there from 1934 to 1940 or so. So it's when he's there in his rooms at Cambridge, right? I've seen rooms like this with this kind of little fireplace and such. There's something else though
Nice.
that happens to him while he's in Cambridge, which is also enormously significant. He reads a lot of Chesterton. And if you read a lot of Chesterton and you're in the right mode and you're reading a lot of, I'll get you to what he's doing his PhD studies on, he converts to Catholicism.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is one of the kind of wild open secrets about McLuhan. He's actually like daily mass Catholic.
That's interesting. I didn't know he had done it so early. I
Yeah.
thought he did it later in life.
No, he
That's
converts
really interesting.
and before he's married, right? And then he and his wife have 6 children. One of his first jobs is at St. Louis University in St. Louis. And there he meets this is my lineage with McLuhan that I didn't realize until recently. There he has one of his students is Walter Ong, who is incredibly famous for doing studies of orality and literacy. And one of my professors from college, Werner Kelber, who taught me on the New Testament, was I don't think he studied directly with Ong because Kelber was here at the University of Chicago, but he was teaching us with Ong's sort of insights into orality and literacy, and Ong and he knew each other for sure, right? So there's all these links with all of these people. The thing that McLuhan was studying, I just like stop playing it being like mysterious. What he studied was medieval education. He studied the trivium, the trivium particularly, and what he did was he thought he was going to do a study of like 16th century rhetorical forms, particularly in the works of Thomas Nash, who I don't know who is yet. But anyway, what he ended up doing was writing, in effect...
Like a cartoonist?
No, that's a later Nash. Nash was a satirist, I think. But that what he ended up doing in his PhD dissertation was basically a history of the language arts in the Middle Ages. And what's strange and wild about it not being published in 2006 is he was writing before most of the scholarship that everybody now would use to study medieval education was even written. So he's like doing it by himself in the dark. I mean, it's so interesting reading his dissertation and going, wow, he knew this before, Curtius, or before, all of the stuff that R.W. Southern did, or before, blah, blah. These are people in my field, right? And I'm like going, wow, he understood the competition between the professors of grammar, the poets and the rhetoricians, and the professors of dialectic and logic. He understands why there's this big debate between the monastic commentators that I study and the scholastics who get really involved in logic and rhetoric and turn into Thomas Aquinas. He understands why we have the splits in the culture that we do to this day. It is wild.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And as you described the small little rooms with the little fireplaces as you'd seen there, this was the atmosphere he was surrounded in when he was basically making up this major for himself.
Yes.
Right. This study. So he was immersed in an atmosphere that influenced the way he thought, and ends up writing about the world being influenced by the atmosphere and how it influences the way they think and act.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Like, so you can see when I started, I spent like a year or two reading McLuhan when at the beginning, basically around the time we were starting Draco Alchemicus, right? And it's like it's all in there, buried in a lot of what we're trying to do in our poem, in a lot of the same fashion of what McLuhan does. he doesn't just study this medieval educational system from the outside. He, like puts it on, gets inside of it, sees how it affects people's perceptions, and then carries that into his Gutenberg Galaxy book is one that more people in academia tend to know about, because he says, oh, the big change between manuscript and print, right? So that there's this massive transformation in the mental world with the invention of mechanical type, right? So from the 15th to the 16th centuries. But then he kept, he just kept going, but he'd already done it with this Mechanical Bride book, where he's looking at advertising, which it's like he's taking the products of the modern media world and reading them with the same kind of attention you would give to reading a manuscript. And a lot of what he does with the advertising pages, it's like what people do now reading, medieval manuscript designs of, information and such. It is so wild that he got to this so early, but he gets it in the same decade when Tolkien and Lewis and Oxford are telling their stories. So whatever was going on in England at that time is, and they're all reading Chesterton, right?
Bottle it. I want some.
Yes,
creative.
Yes,
incredibly creative.
But that they do it. I had his wiki pulled up at some point. Let me see. So there's an interesting thing on the Wikipedia list of him. We say influences. The Wikipedia editors list: Thomas Aquinas, Aristotle, Francis Bacon, Hilaire Belloc, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, Bonaventure. I don't know all of these. Bott, Bertram Booker, blah, blah, G.K. Chesterton, Duchamp, Etienne Gilson, who's one of the great medieval philosophers, or modern students of medieval philosophy, James Joyce, Wyndham Lewis, Thomas Nash, I.A. Richards, right? And they say influenced Derrida. These are the Walter J. Ong, right? Blah, blah, Wired, right? That's great, because Wired makes it, the magazine, the tech magazine, makes him like the patron of the internet in the 80s. Oh. Yeah.
You mentioned Hilaire Belloc, and I was gonna ask if that was one of his influences before you read that list, because he had written one article basically stating that, candlelight is the only real light any people should be seen under. It was natural. It was the natural light. Right. And so he was another author that was very aware of the modern world and the negative changes it was having on people. And from his perspective, it was a negative change because, false light made people they just look bad,
Well, this is,
and he just thought it wasn't the way to. There wasn't a natural way to live. The electricity, he wasn't. I don't think he was a huge fan of it, but it's just the fact that he noticed it and it had written about it several times.
Well, one of McLuhan's famous sayings is, "The electric light is pure information." Right. And you so yes, like when I was thinking about McLuhan two years ago, and I was doing some research on reading and like the manuscript to print thing, but realizing that the light by which you read is part of the environment. And so, there's I started looking at candles and oil lamps and thinking about glass and what media environment were the monastic authors that I study working within, not just manuscript, but in fact, like what kind of light did they have? So yes, McLuhan thought about all of that, and that he gets to the point where you realize the contemplation of our world means all of the things that are always going on all around us are the city is a medium, the roadways are a medium, it's not just the machines are media, but also the trees in our environment. All of this, I guess media are technically the technical extensions of man, the things that we make. But it is this beautiful contemplation, like you say, it's sort of Franciscan, because you're suddenly aware of the world that you're in.
Yeah. You're aware of it. Yeah, you have an appreciation for it, or a criticism of it, right? If it's done wrong, a certain way, if something doesn't feel right, it's going to influence how you think and how you write, how you express yourself. And that's part of the larger, I think, from what I hear from you and Mel, that's part of the larger philosophy of McLuhan.
Well, so interestingly, the first thing you heard was that it sounds demonic, that he doesn't actually evaluate in those terms, right? To say this media, I mean, what he wants to say is, and when we get to the laws of media, he talks about how, new media obsolesce old media, but retrieve things from previous media. That what he wanted, I think what he was trying to do is make people aware of the degree of, like effect that the media had, rather than
manipulation.
right.
Yeah.
But rather than, he says in this introduction, it was this amusement born of his rational detachment as a spectator of his own situation that gave him the thread which led him out of the labyrinth. It's Poe. He's talking about Poe's sailor in the whirlpool, and it is in the same spirit that this book is offered as an amusement. Many who are accustomed to the note of moral indignation will mistake this amusement for mere indifference. I mean, what are you saying, right?
Is he talking to me?
Don't know. But the time for anger and protest is in the early stages of a new process. The present stage is extremely advanced. Too late. 1951.
Yeah.
Wherever it is full not only of destructiveness, but also promises of rich new developments to which moral indignation is a very poor guide. It's not clear that, I mean, this, I actually like McLuhan in this sense that he's not simply saying, and this is where people tended to misunderstand him the same way they misunderstand Tolkien, saying, oh, well, you hate technology. And he's like, no, I don't. What I'm trying to do is show you what it does. It has these effects on us. They're very, very powerful.
Well, now, when he was talking about advertising, was he talking about technology's effects of amplifying the effects of the manipulation of advertising? Was he just using that as an example because it was the one that was most present in everyone's lives?
Well, so the advertising is the one that he first, in Mechanical Bride, the first thing he focuses on as the folklore, right? The way in which,
okay.
and that it's, if you think about it in like a manuscript page form, I think a lot of what he did, he describes incredibly accurately page layout problems and notices them. I mean, I didn't put this in our slides, but here we'll go to our first slide, which was our that's the picture, our ad, which what makes a gal a good call, right? That he's looking. I mean, obviously these are highly designed pages, right? And one of the other people that he may or may not have known in his time at Cambridge was Dorothy Sayers, who was also hanging out with these guys. And she had been an advertising copywriter, and in Murder Must Advertise, she talks about she has the characters talking about what their job is like, right? And
yeah, that was really funny.
It's hilarious. And there's several passages where she's having them reflect, and they're talking about Mr. Tallboy saying, nothing is sacred to you, not even a man's business correspondence. He's upset that they've been reading these letters. How should anything be sacred to an advertiser? Demanded Ingleby, helping himself to 4 lumps of sugar. We spend our whole time asking intimate questions of perfect strangers, and it naturally blunts our finer feelings. Mother, has your child learnt regular habits? Are you troubled with fullness after eating? Are you satisfied about your drains? Are you sure that your toilet paper is germ-free? Your most intimate friends dare not ask you this question. Do you suffer from superfluous hair? Do you like them to look at your hands? Do you ever ask yourself about body odor? If anything happened to you, would your loved ones be safe? Why spend so much time in the kitchen? You think that carpet is clean, but is it? Are you a martyr to dandruff? Upon my, okay, it's like one. She can go on and on and on with these examples because like you're just surrounded by these kinds of questions constantly, and then he's pointing out. We spend our lives inventing these questions. Upon my soul, I sometimes wonder why the long-suffering public doesn't rise and slay us. To say this. So Murder Must Advertise, from which I'm reading now, was published in 1933, right? So about the time that McLuhan would have arrived in Cambridge. And so these are the kinds of advertisements that would be surrounding him in British context. But he's saying, Ingleby's saying, so we spend all our time asking these incredibly intimate questions. why don't they just get rid of us, right? And one of the others says, they don't know of our existence, said Garrett. They all think advertisements write themselves. When I tell people I'm in advertising, they always ask whether I design posters. They never think about the copy. They never think. And so this one we have on screen. What makes a gal a good number, right? I cannot. These are real ads. I found that in the book they're only in black and white. Let me find where this one went. But you can find them out there in the world, in the world, right? See, this is one of the ones that's in the book. I'm showing it in color on screen, but here it is, McLuhan's. But look at it, it's like the girl who gets the calls, the girl who gets the rings, are the girls who are in the know when it comes to caring for their clothes. So when we show you the inside story of one who has a way with all her clothes, both those that show and those that don't. This is about washing her underwear, right?
Yeah, it is. It's like, how dare you, sir, right? It's true that we were reading just from Dorothy Sayers, as our most intimate friends, we wouldn't ask these questions. And yet we come up with them all the time, right? So yeah, this is a perfect example.
But the copywriters are coming up with them constantly, right?
Yeah.
And in
constantly.
Murder Rust Advert,
constantly intrusive, so intrusive.
And they have to be. And this is what Peter Wimsey, in his character as Death Bredon, because he's undercover and as a copywriter in the story, he's trying to learn how to write this kind of copy, and of course some of them, they say, at some point they're talking about, like, why not, let's see. Yeah, it's in the same. So Garrett says they think the advertisements write themselves. They think the manufacturer does it himself, said Ingleby. They ought to see some of the suggestions the manufacturer does put up when he tries his hand at it. I wish they could, Ingleby grinned. That reminds me. You know that idiotic thing Darlings put out the other day? The air cushion for travelers with a doll that fits into the middle and sits up holding an engaged label? What for, asked Bredon. That's Peter Wimsey and the main character. Well, the idea is that you plunk the cushion down in the railway carriage and the doll proclaims that the place is taken. Right, so there's a doll that you sit on the case, but the cushion would do that without the doll. Of course it would, but you know how silly people are. They like superfluities. Well, anyway, Darlings, I mean, so the client for the ad company, right, got an ad for the rubbish all by their little selves, and were fearfully pleased with it. Wanted us to put it through for them till Armstrong burst into one of his juicy laughs and made them blush. What was it? Picture of a nice girl bending down to put the cushion in the corner of a carriage. And the headline, where they're talking about how nobody believes that there's actually writers for this stuff. The headline, "Don't let them pinch your seat." "That's a boy," said Mr. Britton. So on the one hand, it's like they're designed to, it's like, what makes a gal a good number? It's like, what are you going to call, this might as well be like basically OnlyFans for salt flakes, soap flakes.
Yeah, it's a call girl.
It's a call girl.
That's really weird.
But it's about her underwear. Daisy Fresh. Her undies are bright and right, of course. Ivory flakes, gentle care, keep the colors radiant longer. It's her underwear, right? Guard against fraying straps. Help keep undies so nice and dainty. There's your cue. Shun strong soaps, rough handling. Wash your undies in ivory flakes, the fast flake form of baby's pure, mild ivory. It goes down, and it's like, so here's her, her bra, and then we got her girdle. So smooth figure, and so simple. Frequent washings and ivory flakes help her girdle keep its fit longer, wear longer, so her lines stay trim and slim. If that's for you, remember this. Pure, mild ivory flakes is one soap fashion designers and fabric experts recommend to pamper the style and fit of your clothes. Head-turning legs. Okay, we're getting to the point as to why this is called the Mechanical Bride. But one of the things that McLuhan's going to point out in his readings of these ads is how they itemize the body, right? So it's like, it's her bust, right? We've read her bust first, and then we're going to read her girdle, and now we've got her legs. Because gentle ivory flakes care helps safeguard sheerest nylons from embarrassing eye-catching runs. Strain tests prove nightly rinsing with ivory flakes slow down stocking runs up to 50%. Okay, and if you're McLuhan, you're already pinging through all of this. It's like, statistics and how it fits with the workings and all, but it's all to draw attention to her leg, right?
Yeah, well, it's strange though. They're advertising this for women, obviously, because women do the washing. But the way it's written, you're told to look her up and down like this, right? to basically make a spectacle of this woman's body, and it, like you said, a collection of body parts, right? But it's all to appeal to men.
Well, no, it's trying to sell the ivory flakes to the women so that they could be appealing to men.
Exactly, but in a way that appeals to men. Puts it in their mind that people are going to be looking at you. They're going to be looking at you.
Yep.
Right. So you got to get this right. It's
right. And
creepy.
if you buy these soap flakes, the full impression color, yes, colors perk up, brighten up when you sudge your washables in ivory flakes. It's her underwear. Remind you all.
Yeah.
She's washing her underwear. Right. Take this dress of Foreman's too bright fabric. Ivory flakes can help preserve both its fit and color. There's no finer soap than ivory flakes because ivory flakes are mild and pure. 99.44 100% pure. Right?
Yeah, ivory.
If it's
mild,
lovely to
pure,
wear, it's worth
colors.
ivory flakes' care. Yeah. But what makes a gal a good number? Right? So McLuhan is noticing these things and going, how do can you see all of the things that are happening in one of these ads, right? And Sayers is already been sort of starting us off on some of the things, and you could say I would love to know whether Sayers and McLuhan ever met each other, because she's able to notice things like the early part of the story, they're taking around different oh no, they're talking about drinks that they have, right? Have a glass of sparkling Pompagne. What's that? One of the Brotherhood's non-alcoholic refreshers, grinned Ingleby, made from finest Devon apples with the crisp, cool sparkle of champagne. Definitely anti-rheumatic and non-intoxicant. Doctors recommend it. Breton shuddered. I think this is an awfully immoral job of ours. I do, really. Think how we spoil the digestions of the public. Ah, yes. He's still talking to Ingleby. But think how earnestly we strive to put them right again. We undermine him with one hand and build him up with the other. The vitamins we destroy in the canning, we restore in the Revito. The roughage we remove from Peabody's Piper Parrich, I think it's porridge, right? We make up into a package and market as Bunbury's breakfast brand. The stomachs we ruin with Pompagne, we reline with peplets to aid digestion. And by forcing the damn fool public to pay twice over, wants to have its food emasculated and wants to have its vitality put back again, we keep the wheels of commerce turning and give employment to thousands, including you and me. This wonderful world, Breton sighed ecstatically.
Was this written last week? Sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yes. It's like we still live in this world, even though now we have the internet, but the advertising folklore has been, and the Sayers, some of the characters in her story are some of these highly educated people minds that McLuhan points to at the beginning, that the university people did go in, both men and women. Like she's not a university professor person, but now I don't remember what her education was. Anyway, she's like super smart. She has tensions between the university educated people and the trades guys in the advertising copy office, but it's a real issue that the Oxbridge band are all, they have the college camaraderie that they've grown up with and stuff. There are tensions in the story about that and such. But this is what the bright people have been doing for over 150 years minimum, creating this industrial folklore.
Mm-hmm. So
shall we see what McLuhan does with one of these ads? I've got a bunch. You remember one, he says in the introduction, doesn't matter what order you read any of these in, and there's way too many to go through in detail. What do you want to talk about most?
What do I want to talk about most?
Of the ones I gave, I gave you a selection, and
well, there was one where it was a line of women in girdles of different sizes, and it fascinated me because the way it was in black and white, so it was one of the earlier ones. The way it was framed, it almost looked like an electric current.
Okay,
The
that
woman.
actually, that's a good choice, because it actually goes in the book with the one we've just been looking at. So we'll look at that one. So this one is 4-in-1 proportioned girdles. All right,
Yep.
and they're framed. These are I don't know whether the women are supposed to be different sizes. The girdles are.
If you look at the girdles are, it's supposed to show the girdle hits where your waist is, right? So
Oh
it's
yeah.
almost like that, the adjustables. Yeah.
There, one of them showing a bit more midriff than the others. Okay, 4 figures,
Hmm.
all different, but with one common factor: the waistline. This new nature's rival proportioned girdle is available in 4 variations of each waist size to really give control with comfort at and below the waistline. The secret is in the varying hip measurements and varying lengths you may choose from to suit your proportions. Your corsetier can fit you simply quickly with her tape measure. Ask her for nature's rival proportioned girdles and be sure to include a nature's rival bra to complete your comfort. Nature's rival Parisienne Corset Manufacturing Company Limited. Okay, so you had some thoughts about. Tell me what you think about it, and then we'll read what he says about it.
Okay, so when I saw it, I went, "That this is really neat because the way the ladies are lined up and the colors that are used, it's just a black and white, but it's very bright around the edges, and it looked like a circuit board, almost like an electric current was going through them, like on brightening them up, right? Like nature's rival." So, yeah, isn't electricity the rival of natural light, right? When you're lighting
Oh
it up, but
yeah.
it looked like a lit up billboard to me. Like it would be really, really eye catching if it were, and it probably was just in a newspaper, or a catalog, something like that. But I think whoever came up with this ad must have been trying to make it look very contemporary, very new. This isn't your mama's,
Right. This isn't your mama's
underwear.
girdle. Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't your mama's girdle. In fact, here's, first of all, the women are being photographed like this, which was very risque still, even for the 1930s, right?
I think this is
But they're
40s.
lit
I
up
think
like
most of these come
showgirls.
from the 40s.
Oh, it looked earlier than that to me.
Well, so
Okay,
he
but they look like showgirls.
yeah, that so he published this in 1951, and I think, and most of them feel like they're from the 40s.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You are already well trained in McLuhanisms. Okay, so right. When Mel has added a footnote for us. Thomas Nash was an Elizabethan playwright, poet, satirist, and a significant pamphleteer. Right. I just haven't. I mean, what's funny about McLuhan's dissertation on Nash is he doesn't talk about Nash that much. That he
Yeah, I heard Nast. That's why I asked
Yes,
that question
it's
earlier.
not
Yeah.
Nast, it's
Okay.
Nash.
Hmm.
Nashe. And what it is he ended up writing a history of ancient and medieval education in much more detail than what he did with talking about Nash. So, and also it's like the when they published the dissertation, it's like worse than most academic books. It's like text and footnotes, and the footnotes they publish in teeny tiny little type, but they're usually like half the page. So it's
Oh,
for me at my age was nearly impossible to read. Anyway.
yeah. I'd need these reading glasses plus a magnifying glass. I get it.
Talk about medium as the message. Is like I can't read your book because your typeface is too small. All of this
Yeah.
study has also made me like wildly aware of things like font and layout and design, and
Mm,
suddenly you realize you are surrounded by this mythology constantly, and one of McLuhan's main insights is it's working on you whether you're conscious of it or not, and
yeah.
that all of these things are, I think, quite accurately in his observation, working on us more than the things that we consciously like frame as culture, right? All of this
Hmm.
stuff is happening like in medieval manuscript terms, it's all the things in the margins, right? But it's this marginalia, this advertising marginalia that is in fact the culture that we inhabit. So there, for example, the way we look at bodies, he
Hmm.
calls this love goddess assembly line.
Oh, that's great.
And then each of his little meditations is introduced by some kind of probing thought questions, right? The voice of the lab or the voice of the turtle decides our rapid changes of erotic styles. Did you notice the Model T bodies of the women in that revived 1930 movie last night? You're right about the cars, this feeling of the assembly line, right? Can the feminine body keep pace with the demands of the textile industry? Right, he's reversing things. Right, he said, can the textile industry keep pace with the body? Can the feminine body keep pace with the demands of the textile industry? That how much do not that our bodies drive the industry drives our bodies.
That's what happened, and that's been a main complaint of women for the past 50 years, right? It's we're being conditioned to think of, oh, what's the phrase, unrealistic body types, right?
Well, and the thing is, the textiles will give us. Do you notice how the dominant body type changes? And it
radically changed from 1950s to the 1960s. Twiggy was a big thing.
Right.
People, in college age people now have no idea who it's. We barely remember who she is because she became an actress later, but she was the first super skinny model.
Right.
To become famous in the late 1960s. And it was very unusual because before then, if you had a really thin body, you weren't popular.
Right.
Popular girls were curvy like Marilyn Monroe, not like Twiggy.
Right. But the super skinny ones only lasted for a few decades, and then it shifted. You see, but I recognize that the textile industry will, because of the line of the clothes and everything that women are wearing, that the female body type changes depending. It's like I'm sick of seeing the yoga pants. I did yoga for decades. I quit when all the yoga clothes started coming out, and I was like, I don't want to be associated with this.
Yeah. Right? It's all people wear. I mean, but don't get me started. Anyway.
Right. So can the feminine body keep pace with the demands of the textile industry? Right. Are women's legs getting longer? Is the sun cooling off? Okay. That's just the opening, right? He's purposely trying to shake you up and get you to cause and effect go in different ways when you recognize the degree to which he has this idea of inventions projecting themselves into the past, right? It's like, and this being like when you were saying earlier, how can all of these people be saying the same thing? He would say it's like the thing that's going to be invented in the future is calling forth these predecessors. Who knows? It sounds mystical and wild, and then you realize it fits with the way we have problems explaining stuff historically. Like, what's the cause of X? And you have all these early intimations of it, and then bango, it's there, and you're like, where did that come from? He was quite mad, and also incredibly insightful in terms of how we were able to narrate change. It's hard to know. Anyway, okay. It isn't often feasible to arrange exhibits side by side without diminishing their visibility. The risk has been taken in the present instance. The Ivory Flakes ad, What Makes a Gal a Good Number, and Nature's Rival, featuring 4-in-1 proportion girdles, taken together practically engirdle the globe of the interests of industrial man. When Bergson first introduced his philosophy of flux and élan vital to Paris, a wit is reported to have said that, quote, Bergson has put a corset around the absolute. We expect rather less of philosophy today, since we are content to regard as the absolute whatever corsets and bras embrace. These ads are presented here because of their insistence on technique, and also because of the special technique they employ. The good number item is presented in an X-ray method familiar with in motor car engine displays of working models. So she's half undressed, right? For a while, the same ad carried the caption, "What's the trick that makes her click?" So they changed it to what makes gal a good number. Nature's Rival, by its shadow technique, evokes the aura of science and intercellular photography. Yeah.
Yeah. He's saying they're using film techniques to sell the product.
Well, some it's like, so held within a single filmy frame, these figures are a dream, secure in its irresistibility. The resemblance to the line of a beauty chorus is a factor of some interest. The trade motto, Bodies by Fisher, is relevant to the present discussion because it insists on the close relation of motor car glamour to sex, just as the feminine glamour ads in the modern beauty chorus insist on their relations to the machine. These two ads help us to see one of the most peculiar features of our world, the interfusion of sex and technology. It is not a feature created by the ad men, but it seems rather to be born of a hungry curiosity to explore and enlarge the domain of sex by mechanical technique on the one hand, and on the other to possess machines in a sexually gratifying way. For the moment, it will be useful to note some of the more superficial aspects of this strange marriage.
So, Mechanical Bride.
Yeah.
Right. Is he saying that, and again, I haven't read the book, is he saying that women were being programmed to, or manipulated mentally into thinking of themselves machine-like and assembly line-like and conformist?
So what's funny about it is he's not. He is saying that those effects are there, right? But he's and it's appropriate because Bernays in his advertising propaganda was thinking about it as manipulation. What McLuhan seems to be doing is he would say, the ad copywriters themselves are manipulated by all of this. And that's what, but
they're manipulated by what? By the images?
Well, they're manipulated by the whole practice, right? So that it's
so they conform to a certain type of creativity, and that's why it gets repeated for 150 years. The same ads sound like they were written last week.
More that it because of this is where his cause and effect get frustrating, right? Because what you asked is inappropriate, saying, are the ad copywriters purposefully writing this stuff to make women into machines?
Or to make them think of them, to make themselves conformed, right? So the question McLuhan asked earlier that you mentioned was how did he put it? It had, or was it the ad that said this?
Sometimes it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, right? What's the ad and what's the target, right? Because the people are the target. Are women keeping up with the demands of the manufacturers? Are women's bodies keeping up with the demands of the manufacturers? Right. So the manufacturers, to save money, are only going to produce clothes of a certain size. Right. And in this case of this ad, it was 4 sizes. And so women have to conform to that. So they're being conformed to that because it's a natural reaction to the pressure put on them to look like what they see in this perfect chorus line of girdle wearing women. Look, it doesn't matter what body shape you have, as long as it's one of these 4.
One of these
right?
4, right? Yeah.
Right. You can fit into this and look just like a chorus line girl. And so, but it was they're creating an obsession which creates a need that will fulfill their requirements for production for maximum financial profit. It's almost like a loop. And the copy ad people are like right in the middle of it, trying to help that happen. They're like the cog in this wheel.
Right.
That's the way I see
it. So that's not what McLuhan's talking about, because he's so and funnily enough with Sayers, she's not really talking about that either, because they're both talking about it at the level of this sort of mythological folklore effect. And let me see if I can explain how I understand it better. What we were talking about earlier about the clothes make everyone conform. And so there is a sort of like everyone wearing yoga pants looks the same kind of feeling. But they wish they did. No,
unfortunately they do, but that's another question.
But it's Sayers in Murder Must Advertise is also talking about the effect of this practice on the copywriters themselves. So yes, they are meant to be like making money for their clients by writing ads that get people to buy stuff, but it's more that the culture itself shapes everyone in it. So it's not like McLuhan would not make
Right.
it say, that anybody escapes any of this. We're all in it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the other part. Here's another from Murder Must Advertise. The characters are all dreaming. They're doing a kind of James Joycean stream of consciousness, dream, 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 dream. And then the dream of the advertisements, as it were. All over London, the lights flickered in and out, calling on the public to save its body and purse. Sopo saves scrubbing, Nutrax for nerves, Crunchlets are crisper, eat Piper parrots, drink Pompaine, one whoosh and it's clean. Oh boy, it's Tomboy Toffee. Nourish nerves with Nutrax. Farley's footwear takes you further. It isn't dear, it's darling. Darlings for household appliances. Make all safe with Sandfect. Whiffles fascinate. The press is thundering and growling, ground out the same appeals by the million. Ask your grocer, ask your doctor, ask the man who's tried it. Mothers, give it to your children. Housewives, save money. Husbands, insure your lives. Women, do you realize? Don't say soap, say sopo. Whatever you're doing, stop it and do something else. Whatever you're buying, pause and buy something different. Be hectored into health and prosperity. Never let up, never go to sleep, never be satisfied. Once you are satisfied, all our wheels will run down. Keep going, and if you can't, try new tracks for nerves. Lord Peter Wimsey went home and slept. It's more that it's like the feel that people can have now in the scrolling of the social media feeds.
Yeah.
It's not that it's like, it's not even that, Zuckerberg or Elon Musk gets to be outside of any of this. We're all in it. Right. So the electric lights affect everyone. Even if you are an electric light maker, it transforms the world. And that's what McLuhan is trying to show with these ads, that they are, I mean, the purpose of them is obviously get women to buy the stuff, right? But the cultural effects are deeper and bigger than simply the commerce or the profit.
What did he think the cultural effects were, or did he conjecture at all about that, or did he just present what he observed?
Well, that's what he said at the beginning, right? I'm just giving you a view of the whirlpool that we're caught in.
Yeah. Okay.
And we're contemplating it. We're seeing it's like he wrote a lot about the 60s and the effects. Okay, so here's like tidbit of, he's Catholic. He's very devout Catholic. He barely writes about it or talks about being Catholic, but I think I have this right, that he went to mass like daily, regularly. He had the insight that there was a bigger change to the liturgy in the 60s than anything that came out of Vatican II. And it was
in the liturgy itself.
It was putting a microphone on the altar.
Oh.
And he has a whole essay on how that, like, it's, once you can hear the voice of the priest, it changes everything. So it's not so much, it's like the intentionality of certain things. It's not simply what the intention of the media is not the full description of its effects.
Right. I mean, I would argue that the priest turning to face the faithful was at least equal to it.
The microphones came before it. The microphones came before. Yeah.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. So he's and therefore the effect of the sound changes completely, right? If you're in a microphoned environment, as like the light changes if you're in an electric light environment.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what he's thinking of. He's not trying to say, and what's funny is
well, it changed the dynamic. So the priest turning around to face the faithful changed the dynamic,
right.
But it sounds like he maybe thought the microphone changed the dynamic. But how did he think it changed it?
Well, one, the secret's not secret anymore because you can hear him say it, right? So in fact, that he's, yeah, this is the hurdle of getting to the McLuhan version of things, that people sometimes accused him of like hating books or something because he talks so much about the electric media, and he's like, that's nonsense.
He writes them.
I'm just trying to describe the phenomenon for you. So he's sort of phenomenological in these observations. So, for example,
well, I think you got accused of the same thing a couple of years ago when you started talking about the printing press and reading.
Yeah,
right? People's worship of the ability to read didn't necessarily make people smarter.
I did.
Yeah, you
Oh,
did. Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. No, it's
trouble for
because
so many things.
people had this idea of of that the printing press was everything, and
Mm-hmm.
after that everybody became really super smart and educated, and people know so much more now. It's like, no, a lot of the knowledge has been lost, right?
Right.
But that was the conversation, right? It changed what we were thinking about and what we were focusing on, not always for the better.
I have one of those. Here, let's see. No, let's go to this one. You see, we've got a lot of ads here. The pill that took 300 million years to make. We need to talk about that sometime. But let's go
Yeah.
with and the oh yeah. I mean, some of these ads you cannot believe that they're real. This one is
Oh, I
this
can't.
one, how not to offend, right?
Brought to you by the
No, this one
by the
is
committee to
this: too late to cry out in anguish. Beware of the one intimate neglect that can engulf you in marital grief. They're talking about vaginal odor.
Oh no, they did not.
Yes. Too late when love is gone for a wife to plead that no one warned her of danger, because a wise, considerate wife makes it her business to find out how to safeguard her daintiness in order to protect precious married love and happiness. One of the soundest ways for a wife to keep married love in bloom is to achieve dainty allure by practicing effective feminine hygiene, such as regular vaginal douches with reliable Lysol. I am not kidding. That's what it says. Germs destroyed swiftly. Like, talk about, but you thought Dorothy Sayers was not kidding about how they're talking. Have you considered your vaginal odor, right? Lysol has amazing proved power to kill germ life on contact. Truly cleanses the vaginal canal, even in the presence of mucus matter.
Oh, well,
Thus,
no need to get
Lysol
pregnant.
acts
Yeah,
in a
okay.
way that makeshifts like soap, salt, or soda never can. What are you doing? Appealing daintiness is assured because the very source of objectionable odors is eliminated. Use whenever needed. Gentle, non-caustic Lysol will not harm delicate tissue. This is not McLuhan. This is the copy.
You're supposed to be running through the world smelling like pine sol.
A concentrated germ killer. Gentle, non-caustic Lysol will not harm delicate tissue. Easy directions give correct douching solutions. Many doctors advise their patients to douche regularly with Lysol brand disinfectant just to ensure daintiness alone and to use it as often as they need it. No greasy after effect. For feminine hygiene, we're going to get YouTube strikes for me reading copy. For feminine hygiene, 3 times more women use Lysol than any other liquid preparation. No other is more reliable. You too can rely on Lysol to help protect your married happiness, keep you desirable.
Works on your floors too.
And you can cut out the coupon. New feminine hygiene facts, free. New booklet of information by leading gynecological authority. Mail coupon to Lynn and Fink, 192 Bloomfield Avenue, Bloomfield, New Jersey. For complete
Lysol, is there anything it can't do?
For complete feminine hygiene, rely on Lysol brand disinfectant, a concentrated germ killer.
Oh, good grief. Oh. No, they had extra product around said, how can we market this? How can we make women feel even worse about themselves?
Inhibitions, ignorance, misgivings.
Yeah.
Okay, so what? If you think it's like, why are we all nuts? Right? We're surrounded by this kind of, as Sayers points out, this kind of hectoring and intimate. It's like, if next time you see one of these ads, right? Some copywriter came up with that to make you feel bad.
Because they get money when you do.
Well, their clients
lots of money.
Yeah. And so so this is how not to offend, a message for all thinking and or stinking people. Why all this camp meeting hysteria about personal hygiene? Everybody's lonesome because he's a polecat. Even if even your best friends won't tell you, and 4 out of 5 have it. Who is a dog's best friend? I mean, he's to a certain extent skidding the nonsense, right? Now we know why little B.O. Peep lost her sheep. Okay. Closely related to the combination of moral fervor and know-how is the cult of hygiene. If it is a duty to buy those appliances which free the body from toil and thus enable housewives not to hate their husbands, he's been talking about a iron earlier. Equally urgent is the duty to be dainty and fresh. Under the scream caption, we are told in tones of Culton-born unction, too late when love is gone for a wife to plead that no one warned her of danger. It would take much space just to list the current words and phrases related to BO and to leading the life of life buoy. Mouthwashes, gargles, toothpaste, hair removers, bubble baths, skin cleansers, and dirt chasers are packed by long-standing national advertising campaigns. Even your best friends won't tell you. Why be an Airedale? And so on.
Why be an Airedale?
A dog, I guess. The present ad for Lysol, a concentrated germ killer, is typical of the shrill, melodramatic warnings that accompany these products and should be thought of in connection with the agonies of the daytime soap series. These are soap serials, the soap operas, right? The colored comics in the Sunday supplements frequently carry 6 or 8 frame spot dramas of the terrible penalties and dazzling rewards that life hands out to those who are neglectful or careful, as the case may be. In one of these, entitled Georgie's Black Eye, a 12-year-old boy is bragging to his mother how he got a shiner for defending her honor at school. Some of the fellows were sneering that her husband was running out on her. Wow. She didn't have what it takes to keep a man. Mom, mortified, gets busy with the toothpaste. Soon Dad is waltzing her around the living room, and Georgie calls in the fellows to see for themselves. Gosh, they say, looks like he's going to haul off and kiss her.
I've just...
Implied in the cult of hygiene is a disgust with the human organism, which is linked with our treating it as a chemical factory. D.H. Lawrence, rebelling against the Puritan culture in which he was reared, insisted all his life that industrialization was linked to the Puritan hatred of the body and detestation of bodily tasks. This, he claimed, not only was reflected in our hatred of housework and physical tasks, but in our dislike of having servants smelling up our houses while helping us with that work. So that the small hygienic family unit of our cities and suburbs is, from this viewpoint, the realization of a Calvinist dream.
Or a population control person's dream.
Fear of the human touch and hatred of the human smell are perfectly recorded by Mr. Webb in his role of Lynn Belvedere, the super baby trainer. They are also a principal theme of Dr. Mead's Male and Female, where the reader will discover her indignation that the child's earliest notions of virtue are associated with punctual urination and excretion.
Punctual.
Quotation. The bathroom, the clean, okay, blah. He's sort of layering. He is very medieval in this. It's kind of commentary with like gloss, right? He's taken these. The bathroom has been elevated to the very stratosphere of industrial folklore, it being the gleam, the larger hope, which we are appointed to follow. But in a world accustomed to the dominant imagery of mechanical production and consumption, what could be more natural than our coming to submit our bodies and fantasies to the same processes? The anal erotic obsession of such a world is inevitable, and it is our cloacal obsession which produces the hysterical hygiene ads, the paradox here being, much like our death and mayhem obsession in the pulps on one hand, and on the other, our refusal to face death at all in the mortician parlor.
Well, it is Calvinist.
Well, he's saying that this your stinky, not staying dainty, is
right. Unhygienic. You're unhygienic. Your floors are unhygienic. Your children are unhygienic. And yet everything needs to be clean and in perfect working order. And cleanliness is close next to godliness, right?
Well, the before and after of all of this is rather interesting, because you say now, hopefully after this conversation, you will never read an ad the same way again. You realize that they work on us because they're designed to trigger anxieties. But as Sayers points out, they also invent the anxieties for us. Like, would you even be worrying about this without the ad? And I see that.
I wonder if ads were similar in or different in non-Anglo countries. I wonder.
That's a good question. The only thing I remember being in Germany 8 years ago was the cartoon sex ads for contraception, I think. We're on billboards and I'm like, wow, that's really graphic. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
I mean, they're cartoons, right? But they were like, And this was, it's Eastern Germany. It's Germany now, but it's like, no. So yeah, I think for the most part, this is Western world consumerism.
Mm-hmm.
Through,
But yeah, I meant the obsession. I guess it's just those are just the examples that he picked. He could have picked other ones. The obsession with cleanliness, right?
well, he picks a lot of stuff. Like, so the cleanliness one is funny. The bold look, the guy here in the hat, right?
Yeah.
That he
Sharp looking.
I mean, here we have, in the hat, right? Are we in a new masculine era again?
Because masculinity means wearing a hat.
One effect of World War II in putting millions of men in military uniform was to restore to them a large degree of masculine confidence and certitudes. So it was quite early in the 40s that a rather ambiguous cry was heard in America. All men are wolves! It was partly a cry of dismay, partly one of delicious excitement.
Delicious excitement.
At about the same time, the vogue of Frank Sinatra began among the Bobby Soxers. It may be fanciful to suggest that the rather unwolfish Frankie, a crooner whose professional style invited a high degree of maternal response, came at a time of emotional crisis, and that he was the answer to the maidenly prayers of many who were not prepared to make the sudden shift to fending for themselves among the new wolf pack. What he's trying to get you to do in his little meditations is pay attention to not just the what they're selling, but the sort of frame in which they're creating the story for you. So here, my
Yeah.
I hope I'm staying close enough to the microphone when I'm reading like this. That one of the things that the last passage I have from Sayers is the way she talks about how the storytelling works in the ads. I won't read this whole thing, but so to Lord Peter Wimsey, the few weeks of his life spent in unraveling the problem of the iron staircase possessed an odd dreamlike quality, noticeable at the time and still more insistent in retrospect. The very work that engaged him, or rather the shadowy simulacrum of himself that signed itself on every morning in the name of Death Breton, wafted him into a sphere of dim Platonic archetypes, bearing a scarcely recognizable relationship to anything in the living world. Here are those strange entities, the thrifty housewife, the man of discrimination, the keen buyer and the good judge, forever young, forever handsome, forever virtuous, economical and inquisitive, moved to and fro upon their complicated orbits, comparing prices and values, making tests of purity, asking indiscreet questions about each other's ailments, household expenses, bed springs, shaving cream, diet, laundry work, and boots, perpetually spending to save and saving to spend, cutting out coupons and collecting cartons, surprising husbands with margarine and wives with patent washers and vacuum cleaners, occupied from morning to night in washing, cooking, dusting, filing, saving their children from germs, their complexions from wind and weather, their teeth from decay, and their stomachs from indigestion, and yet adding so many hours to the day by labor-saving appliances that they always had leisure for visiting the talkies, sprawling on the beach to picnic upon potted meats and tinned fruits, and, when adorned by so-and-so's silks, blanks, gloves, dashes, footwear, whatnots, weatherproof complexion cream, and Thingummies beautifying shampoos, even attending Ranelagh cows to the grandstand at Ascot, Monte Carlo, and the Queen's drawing room. Where, Breton asked himself, did the money come from that was to be spent so variously and so lavishly? If this hell's dance of spending and saving were to stop for a moment, what would happen? If all the advertising in the world were shut down tomorrow, would people still go on buying more soap, eating more apples, giving their children more vitamins, roughage, milk, olive oil, scooters, and laxatives, learning more languages by gramophone, hearing more virtuosos by radio, redecorating their houses, refreshing themselves with more non-alcoholic thirst quenchers, cooking more new appetizing dishes, affording themselves that little extra touch which means so much? Or would the whole desperate whirligig slow down and the exhausted public relapse upon plain grub and elbow grease? He did not know.
He sounds overwhelmed. That was written well.
Yeah, but the sort of
the character sounds overwhelmed. Like he's been thinking about this, and he's putting himself in the place of all the targets, the advertising targets.
Yes. Well, the next sentence is, like all rich men, he'd never before paid any attention to advertisements.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had considered how much they shape people's lives, and that I barely watch true television. I guess I know that Prime has ads. I'm going to see ads again. But
Yeah.
the character of the, the archetypes engaged in all these activities, and there's ads are always a little story, right? You're always getting, are you
Yes.
in this situation? We'll get you out of that situation. And, they're little narratives, right?
Hmm.
And that is our myth. That's our mythological world that we live in now.
Huh.
Yeah. Why don't we care about Perseus and Medusa and, Andromeda and I don't know.
Well, if they will put them in an ad, and we
We put them
might.
in an ad and we might see
The point, right? Yeah.
that we only
Because
live in
that's
the
what you're saying.
ads
You're not, yeah.
in this
Yeah.
ad world. That's this kind of, it's like, think now when you scroll, if you go scrolling through Facebook, what gets popped up at you, it's your algorithm's going to suggest you. I get all the menopause ads and the girdles, right, and the herbal supplements and
Yeah.
diet
Well, I
and
get plastic surgery.
oh
I had plastic surgery once, and I should probably stop getting them soon because whatever, I don't have Siri or anything like that, but I swear your TV must be recording you because I'll get suggestions based on things we've talked about, and maybe it's the phone or something. It's just really weird.
it's the phones are picking up what we're talking about.
So I'm going to start messing with it and screaming in horror when I see surgical scars and and yelling, "I'll never do this. I will never
I
buy this
appreciated
product."
when I started getting shoe ads on Facebook. I like shoes. But I mean, these ads were placed in magazines. So it's like if you can find the the ads in Mechanical Bride are famous of themselves because they're in Mechanical
Yeah.
Bride. But some of them, a few of them I found out there. Like pages being sold as pages from the magazines that they were run in, that
Yeah.
they were targeted to audiences already by way of, oh, these are going to go in the women's fashion magazines, these are going to go in
Right.
you know
Now, the last time I looked at a woman's magazine type that are targeted towards women, it was hefty, like a couple inches thick, and about 3 3/4 inches of this 4 inch thick
oh yeah,
periodical was all
it's all
advertisement,
ads.
all of it.
And
Yeah.
again, what McLuhan and Sayers would both be pointing out is that is what our culture is. It's made by the ads,
Mm.
and that they are doing this. I mean, I've said it a lot. Like you say, they are our mythology, and I like that Sayers points out. It's like all these, the thrifty housewife, the dashing, it's like saying
Yeah.
the businesswoman, the this or that. That they're all
These
characters,
are yeah, they're the modern types, right? They're the modern fiction types, main characters.
right?
Yeah. I think that's true. I think that's been going on for decades, even before Facebook. People would pigeonhole other people as a certain type, and there was only a handful of those types. Probably did come from the ads, but isn't it a chicken and the egg kind of question, or the ads reflecting the culture, or was the culture reflecting the ads, which meant they were essentially reflecting the thoughts of just a handful of people writing them?
Well, I mean, this is the problem with the inventions, right? It's like, is who is the electric light reflecting? Edison's claiming that he invented it, or that again, what McLuhan be saying is that these things work back on their inventors as well. It's
Mm-hmm.
nobody's in control, ironically.
Frankenstein's monster, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, you can't control it.
it becomes the environment, right? And the the I mean, one way of accurately thinking about it. Let me see whether I can get you there to the point where I just thought that.
She's reeling me in.
Well, no, I was like, do we do Feuerbach or Elaine Scarry or anyway? Um, oh, I go back to Sayers. I think with the mind of the maker and her understanding of artistic creativity and the Trinity. Um, see where how fast I did that. That
That was fast.
once you've made an artwork, right? it or anything, right? You've made something, it exists in the world, it can work on other people. And she's thinking of that in terms of the book, a book that you write, right? If it's just in your head and it's an idea, that's not the book. You have
Mhm.
to write it, which
Yeah.
is like the incarnational element. And but then she says,
Mm.
when it's once it's made, it's like the spirit function. It is out there and it can act on, you know, the world, right? So even our little, you know, it doesn't, our books that we've written act on the people that read them, but they also act back on us. We've had that experience. Once we've written things,
Yes.
they act on us too. So it's
Yeah.
not like Mark Zuckerberg gets to live in a world without Facebook just because he made it. He made
Right.
Facebook and now it acts on him too, right? You are it's not just Frankenstein's monster, is it the environment that we are living in, McLuhan would be saying it, the environment that we're living in acts on us even as we are participating in making it. So it's a very, I mean, it's a kind of sacramental meditation because you're recognizing that your actions constantly create the situations that you're in.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, didn't Frank Capra, investigate this, right, and explore this, and right, what would happen if I was never born? And then he
Right.
gets to see how he's affected so many people just by the one or two people he directly affected in his life, and that it literally changed the whole world for a lot of people.
Right.
So yeah.
But this is what McLuhan's doing, it is by way of the artifacts, right? The media
Hmm.
are extensions of both. So he articulates all of this more fully later in his books, where he says the media are what he says extensions of us, right? They're extensions of our physical systems, but also our neural systems, right? So there are minds and our bodies extended into the world. So media both as like language, but also um systems of transportation and cities and things like that. So they extend our physical selves and
Hmm.
therefore also our mental selves, but also our mental selves. So
That's what's thought.
which brings us to books, right? And this is when you were saying
Yeah.
something about earlier about, you said something about publishing and what you said was what I said about publishing and it affects us.
Right. Well, you were talking about the printing press in particular, and how it led to people's almost worship of books themselves as the height of all learning, and that when reading became more prominent, when people became more literate today means you know how to read, but you don't necessarily know more because you know how to read. And that was the argument I think you were trying to put forth a couple of years ago through your Telegram chat. And I don't think a lot of people were understanding that, but you were specifically talking about the technology of the printing press and how it changed how we learn, and what we learn, and what we learn is a lot less than what we used to learn when fewer people actually knew how to read.
Which brings us to the great books. So I wasn't able. So in Mechanical Bride, the layout that he has is a picture of the indexers who worked at Chicago with Adler putting together the index for the great books. What I found was an ad that ran in Playboy. um, with the screamer for people who are not ashamed of having brains, right? But
In Playboy.
right,
Okay.
no, but here is the most superb home library ever assembled, great books. To play with this, okay, it may not be popular to admit it, but all people aren't created equal, not with equal intelligence anyway, and the longer they live and learn, the less equal they get. You were probably born with a bigger share of intelligence than most of your fellow men and taught how to use it. Chances are the records you own play a more sophisticated brand of music. The books in your library offer more nourishment. The home you live in is equipped for a more gracious way of living. Most of all, you appreciate the difference. Certainly, you are not ashamed of having brains. You enjoy using them. For this reason alone, great books belong in your home. Okay, this I find hysterical because because I teach at the University of Chicago, we're all associated with this collection. B, it was not made by the faculty at the University of Chicago.
Oh.
Adler was simply a friend of the president, Hutchins, who gave him some
Ah!
space to do this.
Oh, that's
The
funny.
cataloging that is in the picture here. It was. I mean, Adler had this one. I think he did convert by the end of his life, and he does include Thomas Aquinas, but he doesn't include much of the Middle Ages in this Great Books Publishing. But it's so fascinating because it's this, with this set, you will be smart.
Yeah, and he wanted to be associated with a great university because everybody respected it. So that was going to help sell the books and his ideas of what books people should read.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I think it's fascinating they put it in Playboy when they did, because a long time ago, is Playboy still even being published? I don't really know. But
it was the ad ran in 1965 apparently, that one.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so
here.
1960s and 1970s, I remember hearing people say, "Oh, Playboy has great articles." I'm like, sure, that's why people buy it, for the great articles.
It's
but
pretty funny. They ran that ad in Playboy, yes.
Yeah, and they ran it in Playboy because that's what one of the things they had been telling everybody they should be known for. And other people would say that, yeah, they get really good interviews with people. They've got great articles in them, right? It's not just nudies. In other words, that's just so lowbrow, right? So then somebody's advertising a collection of great books associated with the University of Chicago. That's great. Multiple advertisement layers going on there.
Oh yeah, and I mean McLuhan is looking at it in a book on the Mechanical Bride too.
Yeah. For research.
He's saying they're well, he talks, he reflects in his, the great books and how to know them. The customer is always right. 102 ideas a minute. It's only 1951. Want to get into the big poker game of the ages? Fill out the form below. War, a great idea, but not peace. Latch on to our big index for deep consolation. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's tapping into social anxiety.
Into social anxiety.
Not being smart. Not being well educated.
Oh, and he talks about the picture with the cards and their little tombstones of ideas. The great ideas whose headstones are alphabetically displayed above the coffin-like filing boxes have been extracted from the great books in order to provide an index tool for manipulating the books themselves. By means of this index, the books are made ready for immediate use. May we not ask how this approach to the content and conditions of human thought differs from any other merely verbal and mechanized education in our time? In the matter of insistence on the supremacy of technique at the expense of nutriment, the University of Chicago is the child of Harvard, as Harvard is the child of German know-how. This is actually accurate. Professor Adler's bookshelf is the natural successor of Professor Eliot's 5-footer. There was a previous series of books you need to read to be smart. Both anguish and starvation of mind are the normal condition of those engaged on the assembly lines of Harvard graduate study, forcing the constant importation of talent.
Importation of
to
talent.
Harvard, because they all die of starvation. This inability to supply its own staff is a well-known paradox about Harvard, but the Harvard methods and pursuits differ little from those of any other graduate school. The pressure is higher there, but humanly and intellectually speaking, Chicago is almost as badly off in its unconscious and uncritical assimilation to the rigid modes of a technological world. This must be a quote from the article that he's reading from Life. Quote, but to hope that even the best training in criticism can cope with the constant storm of triviality and propaganda that now beats upon the citizen seems to me to expect too much of any educational system. End quote. This is defeatist enough, but it comes naturally from an educator whose system and technique in education is itself an unintentional reflection of the technological world in which he lives. It would seem that the very first thing that would occur to an educator today is the fact that for the first time in history, there exists an unofficial program of public instruction carried on by commerce through the press, radio, movies, the internet, right? It's like we're worried about education today and nobody reads books. It's well, guess what? You're about 200 years late.
Yeah.
Sorry. Um, it would blah blah blah. Carried on by the state, the upshot would be no different. This public instruction is paid for by a tax of billions of dollars levied on the public via advertising and entertainment. We're being educated by the ads. It has mainly neutralized the much smaller program of official education with its much smaller budget and much less well-paid brain power. Can confirm.
Mm-hmm.
Where's my raise? Here we are in
She
the
deserved
Mosaic
it. Give her
Ark
a
giving you,
raise.
streamed knowledge, right? I'm a mere professor. Compared to this volume of education, the University of Chicago is tiny indeed. Yet what does Dr. Hutchins, that was the president whose friend Adler was, have to say about it? As a contemporary, radical, revolutionary, humanist educator, he suggests that we concentrate on the great books, but it is quite hopeless. He admits, a last-ditch stand of denuded minds. So McLuhan had done his dissertation on education and on the transformations of education over the centuries and the shift from monastic to scholastic. And what he understood was that there was a similar kind of contest going on in modernity between the classics and the tech guys. The grammarians and the dialecticians, right? And so when he also has another ad that he talks about. Gears got that pill again. This your high school education in one volume. Let me find where that one was. Again, this is the copy. Here's your high school education made easy. 25 subjects simplified in one time-saving volume. The basic knowledge you need for success in business and social life. This book apparently went through, I found you can find on archive.org a more recent edition of it. It's about 1,000 pages long or 2,000 pages long. It promises to give you your high school education in one book. History, language, science, it's all there.
Yeah.
And, try it at home for 5 days free. Increase your earning power, fill in the gaps in your education. This kind of thing, I'm always getting people asking me questions like they want a book that will give them history.
Oh, yeah. Which history? Yeah.
Right. It's like, what do you want? Right. Do you want me to just like plug you in so that you've now got, fill you up like a bird with, no, learning is a practice. It's a contemplation. It's a continuous experiment and engagement. And this kind of thing from the mid 20th century is still like grounded in people's minds of like, well, I didn't learn that in school. And it's like, well,
right. Well, and they're not wrong. Right. That's 20th century education, which continues into the 21st century. You're taught a specific set of information and no more than that. And
well, there's an illusion. It's this illusion that this ad is feeding into of. It's like it's the assembly line problem of education.
That's why I said you probably could do it. Yeah, you could probably teach not you, but I mean a book could probably teach what I learned in high school, all 4 years of it, because none of it was terribly in depth. They were just going for. Now this was late 20th century, so public education was not the best then. Early 20th century was much better. If you look at the books.
You sweet summer child.
If you look at the books and compare what somebody needed to graduate 8th grade versus what somebody needs to graduate high school today, it was much more rigorous. Now, I mean,
yeah, but not everybody graduated high school.
Which one?
That's the thing.
That's true. That's my husband's not from this country, and he thought he saw 8th grade graduations. He thought it was ridiculous, and I said it's because a lot of people until about 50 years ago didn't go to high school, so 8th grade graduation was a big deal. Even through the 1950s.
And that's, the thing is, I've seen the college level exams that they were giving at the University of Chicago in Adler's day, right, when they were doing the great books, and they're ridiculously silly. I mean, it's like
what was in it?
They're just stupid questions. It's like from my perspective as a University of Chicago professor, they're not very hard exams. Right. And Chicago is held up as like back in the day we had real education. I'm like, no, not necessarily. That there's all of what this mythologizing of what counts as knowledge is as much a part of the mythology as everything else that we've been looking at, and that we're seeing it invented by this advertising culture.
Because it was standardized, right?
That
And
exactly.
creating the Department of Education didn't help. It made it
Oh, that
worse.
I definitely no. That's the 1970s, right? That I definitely agree.
Yeah, that was Jimmy Carter, 1970, 78, 79.
Right.
He did this, and what does it do? It holds up a carrot of money for schools if they adopt a specific, very dumbed down curriculum, and that's what's been going on to make it worse. But it was already pretty bad in the 70s, depending upon which school district you were in, because they still had independence then. They have much less of it now. But yeah, they did it. They did turn it into an assembly line. So
But they
if you said to
turned
me,
it into an assembly line with the origin of the American public school system. It was designed on the Prussian German know-how model to create
yes,
industrial
yeah,
knowledge.
yeah, true, but it was more rigorous 100 years ago than it was today, because people had needed to learn more by the eighth grade because they weren't going to high school. High school was like the first 4 years of colleges now,
No, no,
in
no,
a
no,
lot
no,
of
no. That's
places.
not. No, that's what I'm saying. So the University of Chicago was founded in 1892, and I've seen sample exam papers from first or second year. They had like end of year exams. Harper was
Okay.
keen on this. They had end of year exams, and the kinds of history questions they asked are elementary compared to the stuff that I give my first year students.
Yeah, I've seen your curriculum. It's excellent.
Right. So
I studied history in university. It wasn't excellent.
no,
I did not go to the University of
the
Chicago.
feeling of, and this would be an interesting thing for us to do, because I think some of what you're like, things like the McGuffey readers, those were very interesting, but they were not designed for this public school system. They were designed in the 19th century by sort of the abolitionist movement,
Mm,
and they were like literally readers. They were meant to help people practice like reading out loud, great
yeah, I
poetry
used to use the
and things
Bible
like
for
that.
that too.
Right. So the what I'm saying is happening with the kinds of book that this is. So he says, more than wealth, more than birth, or any other fact, education in America is by far the best means of improving one's social status today. He's saying this in 1951. It is also the best
That's
way of
what was
improving
believed.
one's earning power. Such is the carefully considered view of competent students. On the other hand, less and less do men rise in industry and business by gradually acquired experience. More and more are the top jobs filled by specialists with technical school training. And
Mm.
in this way, too, fathers are able to hand the reins directly to their sons instead of to those who have worked up from inside the enterprise. In view of the wide availability of all types of education, the fact that it is also the largest social escalator is a most heartening fact. But the largest group coming off that escalator is still drawn from the top fifth of the economic brackets. The teacher in America is admittedly in a peculiar position. Educationally qualified to advance himself economically, he or she appears to take a vow of poverty instead. The judgment of the community on the teacher has long been, he can't take it. Assuming a voluntary, non-competitive poverty, the teacher stands as a reproach to the rest of the community engaged in the scramble for monetary reward. He asserts his nerve of failure. The community retaliates with a certain degree of distrust and contempt. Distrust of his motives, contempt for his lowly status, and lack of gumption. But there is an even deeper
Mhm.
cause for distrust and resentment. The teacher in America is the appointed instrument of democratic opportunity and enlightenment. Parents entrust their children to the teacher so the children may be changed. The teacher is to make them better than the parents. As such, the teacher alienates children from parents. But the teacher has to be better than the parents, even in their eyes, if he is to do his job. So that there is in the parent-teacher relationship a basic violation of the idea of equality, even when the parent is much better off economically. It's a blah blah blah. It's like it's
Yeah.
everything. It's like it's self-contradictory. And one of
Mm.
the things I think this the It says, far from teaching detachment or developing the power of gauging human goals, our higher education is servile and unrealistic. For to develop individuals with powerful minds and independent characters is to create a supply for which there is no demand. Why train men if there's only a market for robots?
Yeah, that's still true. That's still true
That's
today.
1951, right? And that's when
Yeah.
people, it's like, oh no, we had great education back when, right? There's
Now, I've compared textbooks that my parents used in the late 1950s to textbooks I used in the 1980s, and there's just no comparison. That theirs were better, But this was post Department of Education public school in America too, so that might have made it substantially worse.
I, 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 what's ironic about all this is we actually live in a period of more knowledge than the world has ever seen, right? I mean, I can promise you in academia, we do know stuff. And
Yeah.
the peak of our peak is higher than anybody had in the 50s. But just in sort of some of things that we now know about, right? That's why I say McLuhan was wild, because he seemed like he knew things that it took several decades for the rest of the field to figure out. But he also doesn't know lots of other stuff that we do know now.
Mhm.
But the base of the pyramid has been like lifted, I suppose, and filled in. There are more people in college than the percentage of population going to college in the 50s was like 10%, 5%. I don't know. It wasn't very many.
Mhm.
So comparing what they're not actually equal comparisons. But what I'm
Mhm.
saying is the sort of anxieties of this industrial production of knowledge have been a feature of the period all along.
I I will be right back. I'm
I heard your
sorry.
doorbell.
I know. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Ignore them. Okay. Uh, okay. Mel has been talking to us the whole time. Let's do what these are McLuhan month. Yes, we're going to do a McLuhan month. Casey nailed it. It's ecological. That has to throw off hormones and pH. Probably. Like, what are you doing washing yourself with Lysol? That sounds terrible. I can't talk about the things that you'd need to then rebalance yourself afterwards. Okay, we need to get to the signature. She left right now. Okay, come back. All right. So
Sorry about that.
we've set up the problem. There's media, which is what we usually think of as like, not, words and communication, but there's also this whole rhetorical frame. McLuhan he's a rhetorician, right? He understands the power of rhetoric and the way it's
Mhm.
working in both the visual and the artifactual level of everything. So we get to his the actual mechanical bride, which are the legs.
The legs.
The legs.
Stocking legs.
Yes, the stocking legs, right? So here we go. Where is she? The stocking legs, the mechanical bride. Anybody who takes time to study the techniques of pictorial reportage in the popular press and magazines will easily find a dominant pattern composed of sex and technology. Hovering around this pair will usually be found images of hectic speed, mayhem, violence, and sudden death. Look, the magazines, Look and Life, are only the most obvious places in which to study this cluster of interests. Amid what otherwise may appear as a mere hodgepodge of isolated events, this very consistent pattern stands out. I do not pretend to understand all of it, but it is there for everyone to study, and it is certainly linked to the patterns noted in Love Goddess Assembly Line, the one we started with, right? Many a time
Yeah.
have the legs in this exhibit stood on their pedestal by the tall column of life staff, emblemizing the trick that keeps the big team clicking. They are the slick and visible sign of the dynamo purring contentedly in the time and life building, but not only there, and they need to be seen in association with those window displays of car engines on a revolving pedestal, with pistons sliding smoothly while a loudspeaker conveys Strauss waltzes to those on the sidewalk. To the mind of the modern girl, legs, like busts, are PowerPoints which she has been taught to tailor, but as parts of the success kit rather than erotically or sensuously. She swings her legs from the hip with masculine drive and confidence. She knows that a long-legged gal can go places. As such, her legs are not intimately associated with her taste or with her unique self, but are merely display objects, like the grillwork on a car. They are date-baited power levers for the management of the male audience.
Oh,
So he's...
yeah. I thought as soon as you started describing that, Herbie Hancock popped into my head. I don't know if you remember that video, but the mechanical legs are just walking on their own.
Yes, like that.
Right.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
this had these gold stripe on a pedestal, right? When I was looking up trying to find an example of this one, they ran this ad campaign for ages and ages and ages. There's lots of different versions of this legs on a pedestal,
Yeah.
right? So occasionally they have like a woman. And this one I found they have a woman at the bottom showing how you use the legs. But there is this this my husband once said this to me. He said, sort of upset with the way, you know, we can be looking at ourselves pornographically by just, you know, oh, my hands are such and such. Oh, my neck, right? I've been seeing ads coming through this, like, oh, is your neck a problem? Is your, you know, is your gut a problem? Is your itemized,
Yeah.
like all this
Right. You're still a collection of body parts.
this collection
right?
of body parts, like a, you know, like the pistons on the car, or the grill, or the pieces of the car. It's, you know, if you the mechanical bride is the problem here, because she's been mechanized. It's not really for sex anymore, is what he's saying. It's somehow, you know, it's eroticized but mechanized, and it's, I mean, we're straight up sex robots right now here.
Yes. Yes. And this came out, The Mechanical Bride was 1951. Yep. Yeah, so 10 years later, the pill comes out onto the market. Yep. Yeah, that's prophetic.
Oh, it's, if you're reading McLuhan, you have to get used to this kind of thing. You start he's showing the way in, like, this feels like it could be describing now. And this is 1951. Yes. And he had already been thinking about this for a good decade or so before he started, you know, trying to figure out how to show people what he was seeing. And it was hard because it was coming at, I mean, if you realize what it's like reading, it's like it's coming at you all the time. And that's why he said this idea of our Mosaic Ark is like that. We're in a McLuhan journey, which I do think we talked about in the first episode. Maybe like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah. You talked about McLuhan very early.
That you collect all these pieces, and as you're starting to see the connections and patterns and effects, then you understand what kind of environment we're in, and that we are in our stream trying to do a McLuhan-like reading on all of these. Like, we've done pieces of things like Barbie and the movies, and history and America and virtues, and it all fits together in this. She's leaving again. It all fits together in this environment that we are absorbed in mythologically. I'm now looking to see whether anybody else has been chatting with us. You guys, if you have any questions, now is a good time to ask them. I know you're in there, because I can see that you're looking at we have participants in the chat. Today I learned that elephant-sized sloths and car-sized armadillos once built giant tunnels that still stand today. I'm going to end up reading, Today I Learned, if you don't sit still.
I'm sorry. Somebody keeps trying to deliver food to our house that we didn't order.
You're being McLuhan media'd by our stream here. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Hubby was upstairs in another room with his own headphones on.
Absorbed in his media.
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry, everybody. Sorry, won't happen again, I hope.
Well, but that's the thing in the stream, that we're always in the stream we're always trying to. I mean, the fun of doing a live stream, even though most of you are watching this later, is the sense of that, what the media can make possible now, and so there's hopefully an authenticity to it, because otherwise, how could you know?
She's so polite. Oh gosh.
But it is. I mean, this is why we do it live, and because I can't edit, and I'm, I'm not going to take that out, right?
Well, it is at least demonstrative of, yes, we're now slaves to our technology. Like I have to go run and get the doorbell, which also shows me on my phone, which is why I was picking up my phone, going,
right,
go, yeah, hubby, go answer the door.
Okay, and thinking about that, it's like I've been worrying as I've been reading this book whether I'm staying close enough to the microphone. It's like we are trained, our bodies are being trained by the technology to fit it. right?
Yeah.
McLuhan was very big into the effect of reading, which was making your eye track in a certain way. There was eye tracking studies that he got really interested
Hmm.
in the 50s or 60s that
Oh, he would have been fascinated by today.
yes,
Wow.
that the media, it's like I've noticed this, that one, I think I do have like audio gates and stuff on our audio output. If you have this sensation that people's voices in the audio sound certain ways, it's being shaped by the tech. But we are being shaped physically by the tech to perform for the tech. For example, to sit close enough to the microphone so that the sound works properly. It's
Yeah.
all
Right.
McLuhan would understand all of this
Glasses.
incredibly well.
Yeah.
So yes, that we're live streaming. It matters that it's live because that's also showing the way in which the media is shaping our experience.
Well, yeah, talking about how the media shapes us, it shapes us physically too. This is a really old meme, right, for the evolution of man. So he starts as a monkey and he slowly gets erect and then he slowly gets hunched over again as he's hunched over a computer,
Right.
right? That's a really old one. I think I saw it like several decades ago.
But that's saying it's
Yeah,
been happening even longer than we've been alive, right? All of every
sure.
Sayers would Murder Must Advertise. We're going to have to talk about Murder Must Advertise as a backstory for Draco Alchemicus too, because she's talking about
Mm,
the drug trade in the
yeah,
Murder Must Advertise problem, but that she's talking about the advertising in the ways that McLuhan is then talking about them, in the ways that we can still feel them shaping us now, so that if you're worried about, Siri or Google picking up, I think it's Safari picks up what you search for and then it feeds it into Facebook, and
yeah,
everything's being shaped. We've already been in that for,
yeah. Yeah, but I mean, we tested it out by just speaking a few words and having a conversation, and we immediately got
oh
ads
yeah.
for different things. That was just, I don't like that. I don't like it.
Well, to consider what to do with this understanding, we will have to continue. So so you recognize that we've actually been using these McLuhan insights all along
I
in
do,
our
but
work.
yes, yeah. I think I'm understanding it different than the way he explained it in the books, though.
Okay.
As you said, at the beginning, he just said, "These are my observations about how technology is shaping us."
Right.
Uh, I guess I'm seeing it more from the perspective of the target, right? How do we stop this? Like I said, I don't like this. Right? I don't like my brain being constantly picked, and yeah, so he's just more looking at the observation of the play between advertiser and target, or producer and advertiser and target, and back and forth between these 3 points. It's probably a lot more than 3 points, but
We're going
so
to have to
I
talk.
recognize that it's there.
Yeah. So maybe next time we should talk about understanding media, and you'll get a his his that book, or well, I have to figure out which pieces are the best way to get into what he's understanding, because you can't escape from it. Um,
No.
I mean, one,
Well, you
it,
can, but you have to go live in the woods, and then you might get screwy like Ted
well,
Kaczynski.
the
So
al
don't do that.
the alphabet already did it to you.
See, that's where you were getting comments about the printing press and the alphabet.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why the sort of wishing to be in the different technological situation, you're still in some technological situation, right? And therefore it's
Mhm.
not, he's neither hopeful nor despairing in a sense. He's more, what effects are these having on us?
Yeah,
And
somewhere back in time, somebody's complaining about a clay tablet
yes,
and how much time everyone is spending punching little figures into it.
yes, exactly.
Right.
Right. Civilization itself is one of these effects.
Mm.
And so when people are complaining about, what is our culture today? And it's like, well, we have one. It's around us all the time. And one of the things that we've been trying to do in the Mosaic Ark is, to a certain extent, celebrate it as well as critique what's going on, but to celebrate it, right? We do actually have a living culture. We just are so fish in water with it, we don't notice it.
Mm. Well, yeah, I guess if it's all you've ever been and standing in the rain, you don't really know what wet is, right? I mean,
Right.
it's just it's around you all the time.
And that's why with, in the Mechanical Bride, he's saying he's offering it for contemplation. Like maybe there's strategies
Mhm.
for dealing with it, but what I'm doing here is making you notice.
Mhm. I
So
notice.
now we notice the legs, right? And we will find out, having gotten to McLuhan and his mirrored image of himself in the television, if you can think like if you can learn to think like a medievalist, you can think like McLuhan and vice versa, and it mirrors it. Okay, well, now
Yeah,
that they stopped trying to deliver food to you, we can finish now.
they're persistent, man. Like
You should
twice,
have
the guy
just
said,
said
"Nope, it's not
you
us."
should have just taken the food. Somebody else had to pay for it. No. was it
It's very
was
late
it
here. I don't
tasty
want food.
food? Come
I
on.
don't know.
You're in the environment
No.
of food being delivered constantly. Hey, in LA, they've got little robots with eyes on them that apparently they put the eyes on them because people kept beating up the
Oh,
robots.
and that stopped it because the people beat up on people in Los
Apparently, they
Angeles
beat
too.
up less on the little carts with eyes than they did when before the
Really?
apparently, allegedly
Wow.
they carry pizzas and
Okay. I can't see them not getting ripped off constantly. I don't really know how that would work.
they're around UCLA campus.
Mhm. Especially there. Come on.
To be
Feeding time at the university.
continued.
It's pizza.
Like, subscribe, be in our media stream, join us, chat, subscribe to Unauthorized so we can bring you more art. Thanks for joining us.